This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Thursday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us. Coming up a little later on, it's Thursday. That means a regular visit from John DeSilva of RacingWithBruno.com. We'll get a little, we'll get some thoughts certainly last weekend at Aqueduct. Also, we'll look ahead on Saturday. They have the Dearly Precious down there. We'll get some thoughts for this afternoon, or perhaps even a little for tomorrow racing as well, as there is no New York today. A little later on, we'll talk with Dave Rodman from Laurel Park. We'll definitely get some thoughts for this afternoon from Laurel. And as mentioned, we're going to look at that Chi-Chi's Pride race, the quirky race where Trevor McCarthy, the apprentice jockey, lost the stirrups, still won the race. And in fact, we have the video of that coming up at the end of this segment. Just to kind of prep you, I wanted to show the whole video so you can see the start and everything, but we'll talk about it a little later on with Dave. And then towards the end of the show, Nancy Yuri Holthus from Oaklawn Park. We'll get some thoughts on Oaklawn for this afternoon, as well as looking back at their stake last Saturday and looking forward to the sprint stake they have coming up this weekend. All of that on today's show. Didn't mention the leaderboard as the week wrapped up last weekend. There were some additions to the Kentucky Derby points leaderboard with the way things wrapped up, Samrat being most notable. Samrat now sits at number 8 on the Kentucky Derby points leaderboard after pulling down 10 points last Saturday in the Withers at Aqueduct. Also gaining some points in that race were Uncle Si. He's now number 20 with 4 points. Scotland with 4 points is tied at number 21. And as I noted, last year the minimum number of points was 10 or 14, got you into the event. So there are horses on the list already. There are 3 horses right now with 14 points. Havana, Cairo Prince, and Honor Code. Tapiture sits at number 12. Potentially based on last year, those horses could already be in. The AE list last year, I think the horse was called Fear the Kitten. The AE horse only had 6 points. Wound up not getting in, but wound up had only 6 points to be number 21 essentially on the list to get into the Kentucky Derby in the days leading up to the race. So it's going to be interesting to see how this does shake out in the second year of the Derby points. But right now, Havana leading that, along with those other 2, Cairo Prince and Honor Code at 14. Samrat moves on this week and gets into the top 10, number 8, with 10 points. Noted earlier that the Kentucky Derby Future Pool Wager 2 kicks off today, in fact. And in years past, these bets have gone until Sunday. They have shaken things up a little bit, where the future pools are going to close prior to 3-year-old races on Saturday. And with the Bob Lewis out at Santa Anita on Saturday, this pool will close Saturday afternoon, either at 6 or the post time of the Bob Lewis, whichever comes first. So keep that in mind. And there are your morning line odds on the Kentucky Derby Future Pool. It opens today. I looked up, I was interested. We talked with Jeremy Plonk yesterday. Morning line favorite is obviously All Others, as this is Pool 2, but this is what it traditionally would have been Pool 1. They had the 2-year-old pool last year for the first time at the end of last year. So All Others, obviously, 7 to 5 on the morning line, and that'll hold up. That's where the betting public will go. But I looked up, I just wanted to see, going back to the last 5 years, how individual entries did as opposed to All Others. And over the past 5 years, we have had 3 that were All Others and a couple individual entries. Going back last year, as far as what was Pool 1 last year, but this February pool, Orb was on the All Other list, paid $520 in this February pool. 2 years back, I'll Have Another, the Kentucky Derby winner, was an individual entry, paid $60 in the February pool. Animal Kingdom, back in 2011, was among the All Others, paid just over $6. 2010, Super Saver was an individual entry, and in the first pool, the February pool, paid $43. Going back to 2009, Mind That Bird, in this February pool was an All Others, paid $5.80 for winning the Derby in the future pool wager. So over a mixed bag over the past 5 years, couple of individual entries and 3 All Others. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out. Early on, there are horses obviously like Orb, like Animal Kingdom, like Mind That Bird, that are floating under the radar out there and are amongst the all others. There's a pretty potent list, though, of the individual entries, including Cairo Prince, Shared Belief, and Honor Code. And I've said the last couple of days, with Shared Belief and Honor Code being a little bit behind the 8-ball, that 10-1 does not look attractive at all. But we'll see. Nor does the 8-1 on Cairo Prince, who has already shown some ability. But 8-1, I'm troubled. I would have trouble taking that just to say he's going to get in the starting gate for the Derby, much less win it. But we'll see. We'll see over the next couple of days how it shakes out. And if, next week we'll talk a little bit as the pool closes and we see where the betting public did go, whether maybe there were some places where you could have nibbled a little bit. Right now, I'm just, I've looked over the list and there's not. Vickers in trouble at 20-1. Uncle Si, who's lightly raced, at 50-1 maybe. Potentially a little bit interesting. Noble Moon at 30-1 could be Conquest Tight. Now that one may be interesting off of the nice start a couple of weeks ago, that nice closing effort down in Florida. 30-1 on that one. Candy Boy is 50-1. And Candy Boy will go in the Bob Lewis on Saturday. So folks will have to make their decision before they see that race. But a 50-1 on the morning line, also California Chrome at 50-1. So again, we'll see as the weekend progresses and this closes where the betting public does go, and if there were a couple of places that maybe made sense to kind of jump in and take a nibble. Touched on this a little bit yesterday with Margot Flynn, but I didn't flesh it out. They did announce the finalist for the George Wolfe Award, and the George Wolfe Award honors jockeys whose careers and personal character reflect positively on the individual and the sport of thoroughbred racing. It's kind of a prestigious award. It certainly had, over the years, some very prominent jockeys that have won it. You go back, Bill Shoemaker, Johnny Longden, Eddie Arcaro, Lafitte Pincay, and then you get into names that are maybe a little bit more contemporary, like Angel Cordero, Ron Turcotte, McCarran, Cawthon, and then names that we're definitely all familiar with: Bailey, DeSormo, Gary Stevens, Mike Smith, John Velasquez, Burrell, Ramon Dominguez. So again, it's a prestigious award. This year's nominees for the George Wolfe Award included, and we talked again with Margot Flynn yesterday, David Amos, who's down in Florida at Tampa this winter. He's a nominee, as are Aaron Greider, Corey Lannery, Scott Stevens, and Dennis Carr. So we will see. Voting closes on February 11th, and the winner will be announced soon thereafter. And I think typically they give the award, actually give it away out at Santa Anita, I think. I'm not positive about that. But again, we'll know in another week or so who the winner is. Kind of a prestigious award on the jockey side of the game. The January figures came out yesterday via Equibase, and I would say good news. It seems like the January numbers year to year held pretty steady. There was a 0.23% decrease in handle for the month of January, and so you're talking a very nominal decrease. That's despite losing, well, actually we gained some racing dates, and that's maybe the little bit of a surprise. I'd have to go back to last year and see exactly how the weather affected last January, because certainly this January, to see the dates go up like that, the dates went up just a little over 4%, whereas again, pretty much the handle held steady. But I'd have to delve in a little more and see, because certainly there was some missed races, some missed racing days around the country, January of this year. And I'd like to go back to last year and get a little more of a look on why there was a discrepancy, why we had more days this year, what dates were lost last year. Fairgrounds, the turf racing they lost. Turf racing is so attractive to bettors. There are things like that may parse out to explain, the little bit of a discrepancy here where there was more race dates, but essentially the handle kind of held solid. But as I say, to me, given the fact that I think this was a very funny month weather-wise, that certainly canceled racing or affected racing all across the country as far as east of the Mississippi, north and south, I would really like to delve in a little bit further. But as I say, with a 0.23% decrease, pretty much held steady. So overall, I would say, good news for the racing game. Have a blue blood that we'll have to look forward to in a couple of years on the racetrack. Excuse me, over in Europe, born on Saturday, an offspring to Frankel and Midday. Midday, of course, was a winner of the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. She was a multiple Grade 1 winner. And the filly was born on Saturday. They had some pictures that have been put up over the past couple of days. You can find them out on the internet. An offspring of Frankel and Midday. Juddmonte Farms has put out the call and said they would love to hear the public offer names for this filly. Some suggestions have already been made, but it was interesting. The article, and I have it linked on Equidaily coming out of one of the European newspapers, the article does note that both Frankel and Midday, both trained by the late legendary trainer, Sir Henry Cecil, who, since Frankel was named in honor of Bobby Frankel, it just seems like, why don't they name the filly Cecil? That seems like the perfect name. And as I say, the article mentions some fans have already made suggestions, and some of those go to that. One of the suggestions from fans was Henry's Girl or Henry's Star in honor of Henry Cecil. And there are also some coming off of the Frankel name, like Bobby's Girl. Then there's some, and again, it's the offspring of Frankel and Midday. Somebody has suggested Frank Day, Middle, or Faraday. I'm not sure I'm up with those so much. But I think, again, something maybe to honor Sir Henry Cecil certainly is appropriate with this offspring of Frankel and Midday. But again, a nice European runner we will certainly have our eyes on in a couple of years, as will we be looking to, in a couple of years, all of these Frankel runners who will be hitting the track. His first crop now starting to hit the ground. Article out of the San Diego newspaper within the past day or so talking about the new turf course. Turf course out at Del Mar is now being laid down, and it's kind of interesting. They go through the process that it was involved and how this is going to affect racing a little bit as they have revamped the turf course. But boy, this process goes back to October of 2012, and that's when they laid down the seeds of Greg Norman 1 Bermuda grass, plotted on a 12-acre site out there in Southern California. It has now been growing for the better part of maybe a year and a half. It is mature. They're now cutting it, rolling it, and getting it ready to lay down on that Del Mar turf course. That should happen around the 21st of this month. It is notable, though, that they said when they pulled up the turf in anticipation of laying down the new turf, that then gave them an opportunity to really work on the turf course. And the quotes from the San Diego article are interesting. And there's a picture accompanied where you can see the turf course is kind of laid bare. You can see it's just now dirt as they anticipate laying down new sod. But it's an aerial view that shows the ocean right across the street. And the article does note this is essentially at sea level or below sea level. So as they worked on the turf course, they found some soft spots, some places where they wanted to upgrade and work and stabilize the track a little bit now that they had the chance to do that. But as is noted in the article, a quote from the superintendent, it's a very different kind of a surface to work on because of that proximity to the ocean. They're kind of at sea level, below sea level, and so he described it as a cookie sitting on top of milk. Once you break through that cookie, you're down in the milk layer and you have nothing to go. So they had to work a little bit gingerly, but they have now worked on the turf course, have it prepped, and again, expect to lay down the sod coming up on February 21st. It also mentioned, I found this interesting, it's only in Southern California, but they are bragging about the fact that some of their the mixture of fertilizer and compost that they're going to lay down on the turf has been produced by worms, as is the case, I think, in a lot of these situations. They have worm castings that get mixed in and become part of the fertilizer. But they're bragging a little bit, and as I say, only in Southern California. They're vegan worms. So the vegan worm castings will be put on the track at Del Mar. But again, the new turf course has been widened, will now accommodate 14 horses. That's going to give them a little better opportunity to make a push for the Breeders' Cup. I would expect to see the Breeders' Cup out at Del Mar, again, with this new turf course, and sooner probably rather than later. But this is certainly playing into it. The turf course now underway with resodding. And again, you can find out more about that. It's an interesting article in the San Diego Union Tribune. I have it linked over on Equidaily. All right, we're going to head to the first break now. Again, after we come back from the break, John DeSilva, a little later on, Dave Rodman, Nancy Yuri Holthus from Oaklawn Park as well. But as we go to the first break, as promised, we'll talk a little bit about this race with Dave Rodman, but I wanted to show it in whole so you could get a real feel for it with the call, Dave Rodman's call and whatnot. It is the race from a week ago today, last Thursday. Apprentice Trevor McCarthy, who's doing so well, was the leading jockey, in fact, last year on the Maryland circuit, January to December overall. Trevor McCarthy doing very, very well down there. And boy, this just adds to his legacy a little bit. We're going to watch the number 3, Chi-Chi's Pride. And when we kick into this eventually, as we go to the break, look, their video shows a pan shot, and also you can get a look at the head-on of the starting gate right at the beginning of the race. So look for that number 3 hole. You'll see Chi-Chi's Pride, the number 3, gets buffeted around a little bit, at which point Trevor McCarthy loses the irons. And when you look at the pan shot, you can kind of tell his leg is dangling a little bit. Watch him all the way around, and Dave Rodman kind of picks up on it towards the end and realizes McCarthy's doing something special here, but Chi-Chi's Pride will get up to win by the barest of margins, again, with Trevor McCarthy, no legs in the iron. So it's a really... hats off to Trevor McCarthy. Wanted you to see this. So we'll watch Chi-Chi's Pride win. Trevor McCarthy get the rodeo ride done here as we go into the first break. And when we come back, John DeSilva, and a little later on, we'll talk specifically about this ride with Dave Rodman. All of that right after this.
And they're off. Bad stumble for Bold and Ready right at the start. Pelican Cove out with early speed, and Brad quickly to join to the outside. Brad and Pelican Cove hooking up in a head-to-head battle early on here. Then the inside is Cousin Brucey racing third, and Cunbree's Destiny is up close there racing in the 5th spot. And then in between horses, Piano Man Ted is out 3 wide for the far turn run. As they round that turn strike ahead, it's going to be 4 wide into the far turn. The riders lost the irons there on Chi-Chi's Pride, having no control at all, second last position. And Bold and Ready is the last horse as they move past the 5/16. So Pelican Cove and Brad 1-2, and they've been going a spirited pace all the way. Carnbury's Destiny trying to bridge that gap is patiently ridden from the 3rd spot. Carnbury's Destiny to try to stick down to the inside for that final furlong and a half, and Carnbury's Destiny is shoved right on through by Sheldon Russell. Carnbury's Destiny coming gamely up on the inside. Carnbury's Destiny now colors Pelican Cove in the final 16th. Pelican Cove fights on, and Chi-Chi's Pride rider got the they didn't even get the feet back in the saddle in the irons, it appears. Wow, what an amazing ride there. Trevor McCarthy and Chi-Chi's Pride without the irons most of the way. I believe he got up.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Shamrock Showdown on March 1st. So sign up today, online at capitalotb.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Thursday morning. Happy to be joined now by John DeSilva of RacingWithBruno.com. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How's everything?
Very good. And John, no racing at Aqueduct today, so you're going to shift attention and look elsewhere. But for folks who are playing New York this afternoon, of course, you had some weather cancellation this past Monday. Here in upstate New York, we got socked yesterday. But what's your weather look like down in New York for tomorrow and the weekend?
Right now it's looking good, but we are supposed to be getting snow Saturday night into Sunday. Now, of course, some people are saying 2 to 3 feet. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I would be a little worried about racing on Sunday right now.
All right, we'll keep our eyes. I think we're in the same boat here in upstate. This storm, they haven't quite defined it yet, but I think we're supposed to get something. And yeah, I've heard the same kind of dire forecast, so I certainly have my fingers crossed, because my snowblower is not going to last too long. I'm hoping for the end of winter, so as little snow as possible. I have my fingers crossed.
You do what I do. Get the neighbor across the street to use his snowblower and then give him alcohol.
You know, my neighbors all come down and kind of partially sometimes do mine, but maybe you've come up with something. I just don't have the right bribe yet. I gotta work on that. All right, we'll look at today a little bit, and then go back and look at some of the New York racing from this past weekend, as well as the upcoming Dearly Precious on Saturday. But let's start things out and get some thoughts for today. And I know Racing with Bruno, folks can find your thoughts as far as the fairground sites, as far as the fairground races on their racing days. And you're going to give us some idea for fairgrounds this afternoon. We'll kick things off with their race number 1. The fairgrounds opener today, a maiden claiming event, 1 mile and 70 yards. What were your thoughts there?
Well, I'm looking at a race where your morning line favorite is like an all-or-nothing horse, which is number 7, Voodoo Spell. Now, here's a horse that's adding blinkers, was running on turf, only has 1 dirt race to show absolutely nothing, now drops 12-5. But at 5-2, this is the type of horse you definitely want to beat. So I'm looking at number 1, 7 spot. This is a horse who ran third last time out at this distance at level at 8.5 to 1. The previous start, the horse was a beaten favorite under Flores. Bridgman riding for Rasmussen. I'm very glad these two are riding again. They did have a falling out a couple years ago, but looks like they finally kissed and made up, and they're back together, draws the rail, and I think that this is a horse who hopefully will be a prize if that morning line favorite takes some money. I may not get 5 to 1, but I'll still take 3, 4 to 1 on 7 spot.
I agree with you completely, though, on the morning line favorite. You have a horse here that really hasn't shown much, and folks are going to hang their hat on the Class Relief, but really, this is absolutely the kind that's worth taking a shot against, because you just don't know. The Class Relief might be a wake-up, but this horse could just as easily run another poor race again today. So it's the kind of race that you absolutely want to shop around for some value.
No doubt about it. And like the Asmussen, we all know what he's doing. And Bridgman, who, if you remember a few years ago, those two were unstoppable in Kentucky and Louisiana for a while. Then they had a falling out because his agent spun Asmussen. And you don't spin Steve Asmussen, because he will hold it against you for a long time, and he did. But finally, they're back together, and I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, Sean Bridgerman must have been happy to see David Flores head off to Singapore, because early in the meet, Flores and Asmussen were quite a team, and I was scratching my head. I thought, boy, if you get in with Asmussen, why head off to Singapore? But David Flores made the move, so that probably opened things up a little bit for Bridgman as well.
No doubt about it. Plus, a little easier with the weight and with the purses that they send. You might be running a couple of days a week, but it's like 2 weeks of racing here in the States.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's take a look at race number 9 this afternoon at Fairgrounds. Again, a claiming event. This one is about a mile on the turf. Your thoughts on race number 9?
I'm mostly going with Bridgman and Asmussen here with number 7, Skinny. Now, this is a horse who ran 4th against state-bred optional claimers on the dirt last time out. In the previous start on the grass, he only started on the grass. This horse basically did tire, finishing 5th at the about mile distance, but is running against claimers for the first time in his career. This horse owned by Zayat Sale. They paid $120,000 for him. I think this is a horse dropping in class. I think will help here, a little easier with the pace. Dirt start off layoff, which is an angle I always liked, and at 8 to 1, I definitely have to take Asmussen. Like that.
I was just about to say that 8 to 1 looks very attractive. Third start back off the layoff, 8 to 1, Asmussen. I think Skinny looks very interesting myself. All right, now let's shift our attention out to Southern California. You're going to take a look at the opener at Santa Anita for this afternoon. Their opener is a maiden claiming event on the dirt at 5.5. What you think there?
This is a horse where I see a horse that I'm very surprised is in this spot, and that's number 6, Geld Automat. Now, this is a horse who, yes, he was beaten 12 3/4 lengths, but Chelios was a very impressive winner that day, and I think Chelios has a very nice future ahead of him. Now, Carl Callahan drops this horse for a tag for the first time in his career. They paid $100,000 for him at the Barrett sale last year. And coming out of which could be a key race, Chelios, I'm just a little surprised that he's willing to drop this horse in for a tag. Now, it could be maybe there's something wrong. Who knows? But when I see a horse like this, I have to take, especially when it's not even the morning line favorite. I think Geld Automat, if we can get 5-2, I'll be salivating here.
Yeah, I agree on the Chelios angle. I mean, that horse is going to turn out to be very nice. And so it's not just, maybe trying to find a more realistic spot, but boy, they really dropped down to the 30 tag here today. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher, but I agree. Showed a little punch in the last 2 races, and I think then you get some class relief. That early punch certainly can hang on a little bit longer against lesser company. I agree. That one's kind of interesting today.
And also you look at the morning line favorite here, which is number 2, Mr. Cactus. Yes, the horse ran second last time out at this level, going 6.5, but now you're adding blinkers. Michael Pender, he's a good trainer out in California, but I'm a little surprised that they're adding blinkers after finishing second in a race like that. You just have to wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, and again, makes for an interesting play against maybe a little bit, and so shop around for a little bit of value. We'll see what happens there. All right, John, let's take a look back now at last weekend. Nice action in New York. We've already talked a little bit about the Withers with some of the other guests this week, and we're going to take a look once again at the stretch run of the Withers. Samrat, Uncle Si, a couple of New York breds put on a ding-dong battle. The consensus seems to be these are a couple of nice horses, but everybody, I think, wants to see another race from them. A couple of New York breds, not quite sure what we had behind. Personally, I want to give one more shot to Scotland. I still think he's probably better than we've seen. I will be interested to see where Tony Dutrow chooses to go with him, because there's still plenty of options to try to get a win under his belt. But I'll give him another one, certainly. But the 2 front runners, the 2 winners, the winner and the second place finish horse in here, Samrat, Uncle Si. As I say, everybody kind of feels like pretty impressive on Saturday, but what were they beating? A couple of New York breds, however, put together some pretty good numbers up in the 90s as far as the buyer figures. I think they'll be fun to watch going forward. As I've said, if we may get more, we may find out more in the next race, but over the past few weeks, I think that's similar to all of the 3-year-old Derby Trail races we've seen over the past month or so. I think they've all been kind of barometer races.
They definitely have been, and you take Samrat, Uncle Si, 2 New York breds who, hey, maybe they won't win the Kentucky Derby, but seeing them in the Albany could be very interesting. But at the same time, they have talent to be very competitive in open company. Now, do I think they're going to win the Kentucky Derby? As of right now, probably not. Even though the one advantage Samrat has with those 10 points, he doesn't have to win now. He just has to place in his next start, and he's probably going to be able to get into the Kentucky Derby. Scotland is very intriguing, because this is a horse who still a maiden, but now has 4 points in the Kentucky Derby point standings. And now basically, sometimes those little extra points could be an advantage, because now if he wants to take back, run him in the maiden race, get him a victory, he can do that, and then take one shot someplace around the country. I wouldn't send him to the Wood Memorial, but I'll look for one of these other races around the country where maybe I could get some points, and I can maybe backdoor my way into the Kentucky Derby and try to peak going into the Kentucky Derby. Because remember, if your goal is the Derby, you need to make sure you have enough points here.
Yeah, as I say, I find him very interesting, and you make an interesting point. They can kind of step back and maybe get his head screwed on again right, and then take a little bit of a shot, and points-wise, they might be in a very interesting position. I also said earlier this week, I think the 3-year-old filly division is winding up to be kind of interesting. The 3-year-old boys, definitely so far on the Derby Trail, there have been some horses, again, I think they're barometer horses, but they've done enough to go on. The one horse that probably stands out so far that we've seen, of course, is Cairo Prince. Shared Belief, Honor Code, I'm wondering if they're a little bit behind the 8 ball, of course, but I think the 3-year-old boys division has been a lot of fun. 3-year-old filly division, I think, across the country also shaking out that way. And on Saturday at Aqueduct in the Busher, I thought Joint Return coming from in the back of the pack into a fairly slow pace. I think she's a 3-year-old filly that's going to be fun to watch.
She definitely looked very good winning that race on the Kendrick Carmouche. Now, we all like Bally Lee, and she is a big disappointment in that race, finishing off the board. Fierce Foods, who a lot of people like, just couldn't hold on after those slow fractions, and I guess she's going to be distance challenged, even though she has points to get into the Kentucky Oaks as we speak. It'll be very interesting to see what some of these other horses will do as they get a little closer. Now, Joint Return, who knows what's going to happen with Service, because he has options. Because remember, he does have a stable down in Oaklawn. So we could see her going down to Oaklawn and running a couple of 3-year-old filly races down there, prepping for the Kentucky Oaks. And as we've seen horses like Rachel Alexandra go that route and do very well in the Kentucky Oaks.
Yeah, that's a great point because, of course, they, like the 3-year-old boys series, they have a good 3-year-old filly series down there as well. But I think she's going to be fun to watch. Bally Lee, I'm willing to kind of give a pass to. It was only her second career start. Top of the stretch, it looked like she was in good position. And then when the real running began, she just didn't really have it. But only the second career start. I'll want to see one more from her because I think that career debut said she certainly got some talent, but Joint Return certainly was interesting. Now let's take a look out at this weekend's feature down at Aqueduct on Saturday. $100,000 Daily Precious. Again, it's the 3-year-old fillies. This time they're going 6 furlongs. And John, when we talk, it is a short field, and I think the betting public is certainly going to pay a lot of attention. Another Tony Dutrow runner, Gracer. We're going to watch the Marshua last time, January 4th down at Laurel Park. Gracer, the number 2 horse, is going to win this one pretty convincingly as the 1-2 favorite. And I think she's going to attract a lot of attention on Saturday as well.
She definitely will attract a lot of attention. Now, just to let people know, as you know, I do work with Racing with Bruno, and the owner Bruno de Julio. He also does other things like buying horses at sales, and he actually went and bought Bridget Maloney for these connections. So we have a little bit of rooting interest here. And yes, she's a very nice New York bred, but Gracer is the one to beat. I mean, this is a horse very talented, has won 2 in a row, coming back to New York here. I mean, what can we say? Nice full of work at Fair Hill on February 2nd. She's octatastical speed, and she's just on class much better than these. And I'll be rooting for a Gracer Bridget Maloney exacta, because, hey, do I think Bridget Maloney is a nice horse? Yeah, she's a very nice state-bred horse. Do I think she can win this race? Probably not. But, hey, if you can get some, black type here finishing second to a horse like Gracer, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that was a good call by Bruno. 3 for 3 so far for Bridget Maloney. And as you say, tries for a little black type. That should be interesting. Bruno certainly making a name for himself. Also on the Esquire series, making some cameo appearances.
Yes, he is. And now it's supposed to be on there on Tuesday, and I got edited out. So far, the only time you get to see me is the back of my head from a couple of weeks ago.
You can freeze frame that and just kind of go back and forth and live in infamy that way. But I have not yet seen this week's episode. I'm kind of catching up to them as they appear on the internet. And usually that's about a day or so after they're on the network. So I gotta pull that one back up.
Well, I'll just warn you about this week's episode real quick. Helmers is in Royal Ascot with another woman. And like I've told you before, he's
number 3.
He's going to have a different woman with him in each episode. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is you get to introduce Kevin Cox, and it's the Belmont handicapping contest, which he happened to win. The thing that I have to say is I thought they didn't show enough of Cox in this episode. You just got to see a little bit of him, and with him winning the handicapping contest, you would have liked to see a little bit more, especially on the second days that coming towards the end of him winning that handicapping contest. So it's still surprising they didn't show more of that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping in episode 3 they pick it up a little bit because I thought the first episode was kind of promising. Second episode I thought was just kind of 6 guys at the track. I mean, they were at the Triple Crown races, but there wasn't a whole lot of drama. It was, okay, here's who I'm going to bet, and then they bet, and then some of them won and some of them didn't. There wasn't enough drama for me in episode 2, which I didn't think boded well for the future. But the game plan, I thought, was to focus on some of these handicapping contests. And I think if they get those back into the mix, that adds the drama that we need.
It starts this week with the handicapping contest. And what you're going to be seeing is they're going to different places around the country where they had handicapping contests like Del Mar, Saratoga, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, Keeneland, places like that, with ending in Las Vegas. So you will be seeing a lot more of the handicapping contest, as well as some of the players doing things outside the racetrack. Whether it's Kevin at Old Friends at Cabin Creek at Saratoga. I was there when they were filming that, so you might see me there as well.
Oh, nice.
Or you might see Helmers down on the boat with bikini-clad models down in Florida.
Very good. Yeah, as they say, I think that adds some automatic drama, so I'm looking forward to pulling up this week's episode. John, as always, we appreciate the visit and a little change up this week. Again, with Aqueduct on the shortened schedule for the month of February, we took a look this afternoon at Fairgrounds and the opener at Santa Anita. So good luck with those, and we'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Take care, everyone.
John DeSilva, you can find his selections and thoughts at racingwithbruno.com. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Dave Rodman from Laurel Park. Stay tuned.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Cassano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Thursday morning. Happy to be joined now by Dave Rodman from Laurel Park. Good morning, Dave.
Hi, good morning, Seth. How are you today?
Very good. We were just talking during the break. They have now announced the headline act for the Preakness, and it is going to be?
Lorde, Lorde. For those who don't know who Lorde is, she's will be the headline act of the Preakness Infield Fest on the main stage. And she's 17 years old, and she is huge internationally, in the States here as well, obviously, and internationally. And she made an appearance on the Grammys, so if you want to see her sing and don't know much about her, obviously you can YouTube that. But Preakness Infield Fest always trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve. Last year we had Macklemore, Ryan Lewis, who obviously have become even bigger since then. And we had Bruno Mars a few years ago, if you remember. And, of course, he played the halftime show at the Super Bowl with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And so the Infield Fest kind of turning into, I'm not going to say spawning ground, but, we're just a little bit ahead of perhaps the curve. I think she's got some very obviously young appeal with the big #1 record here and around the world. That's Lorde, Lorde. So Lorde is coming.
Preakness Infield, the star maker. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, no question about it. And speaking of young and talented, there we go, nice segue. Speaking of young and talented, I want to go back to last Thursday down at Laurel. And Dave, we watched it at the top of the show. We watched the entire race. While you're talking, we'll watch the stretch run again. Chi-Chi's Pride, Trevor McCarthy, the leading jockey from Maryland in 2013, adds to his lore and his legacy with a stirrupless win, gets up by a nose last Thursday under Chi-Chi's Pride. How about Trevor McCarthy?
Seen horses win races where the riders lost the rein, or perhaps even the saddles slipped forward, which is even very tough to control a horse. But when you lose not one but both irons shortly after the start and throughout the entire race, never really regain his feet in the stirrups properly, yet gets up to win, it's obviously a headline maker and a fantastic ride, a gutsy ride by Trevor McCarthy. Adding to the Maryland who knows what's next between Spicer Cup last year and this year, we're kicking it off with a stirrupless win by a very brave Trevor McCarthy, who basically used, his finesse and will to win. I mean, I guess he could have basically sat back in the saddle and pulled the horse up, but found himself in the contention at the top of the stretch and went on with it and gets up to win with Chi-Chi's Pride in a stirring stretch duel there. Fantastic ride.
Yeah, it's Saratoga Graveyard of Champions, Maryland, hometown of crazy rides.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect next. To be alert.
And we have the shot right on screen now where you can see the stirrup as he comes under the wire. The stirrup is right behind his knee. You can see he has no chance of getting it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the turn, I noticed he was out of the irons, and normally I figured, well, he'll just finish in the back of the pack, and kind of toward the eighth pole, and I saw him rallying a little bit, and I figured, well, maybe he did get his seat back in the irons, but it became evident as you really watched the race toward the end that both feet out of the irons there, and continued on that way through. He said he was a little bit sore for the rest of the day, but certainly one to remember here.
Yeah, I heard one of the observers, a horse person, I assume, said, had to be like missing the balance beam 40 times in a row.
Wow, yeah, yeah. But, he's young, resilient, and, finished out the rest of the card as well after the finish on Chi-Chi's Pride, the victory.
Yeah, good for him. And again, we've been watching him for a while now, and as I say, just adds to the legacy. All right, Dave, let's shift our attention now. Look out at Laurel for this afternoon. First off, what's your weather look like down there?
A little chilly, but nice, partly cloudy, and the track is fast. Yesterday we had a nice fair racetrack, so looking for perhaps, again today, even though we had an off track yesterday, I thought the rail would be dead, but it seemed like you could win from just about anywhere, but a fast track today as opposed to the off conditions yesterday afternoon.
All right, let's kick things off. Let's look out at race number 4 today. Little maiden claiming event, 5.5 furlongs. I love these kind of races. And just on first blush, 2-1 on the morning line. That's epic off of the career debut. Certainly is going to attract a lot of attention. But I like these races because I like to suss out maybe some of the breeding and whatnot on first-time starters, and I think the Trombetta horse, Let's Get It Going, looks kind of interesting on the nature-nurture angle. How'd you see it?
You took the words out of my mouth there. I mean, I like this colt by Distorted Humor, based off of a work at Fair Hill on January the 14th, and went 102 from the gate. Same morning, same distance at Fair Hill from the gate was a horse named Miss Emelina, who I believe it was last week we gave her out. She ran second, or perhaps the week before, in a maiden $40,000 race on the dirt to a second-time starter named Turf Craze, who showed great improvement. So I'm assuming they were kind of workmates from the gate. Let's Get It Going. So the raced here already. A good, solid second for the maiden 40, and this colt debuts for maiden 40. I don't know which one was actually, perceptually better to Trombetta, but this certainly is a colt who's bred to run early. The Dam Spring Meadow by Meadow Lake topped the career with 102 buyer figure, $485,000 in earnings, 6 of 20 sprinting, and almost $500,000, as I said, in sprint earnings alone.
Yeah, it certainly looks interesting to me. The aforementioned Trevor McCarthy on board, and that 7-2, if that whole morning line holds up, becomes even more attractive. Fifth race.
And the four, that's epic. The horse you mentioned, Kieran McGee, by the way, back-to-back wins here yesterday afternoon. This gelding, claimed off Rodney Jenkins, had been entered, but we canceled the card a few weeks back. So that's the reason he's been off since December 31st, hasn't run back. But kind of confident step up to the 35 level after the claim. He'll be tough in there, as well as maybe use Cutty Shark in your gimmicks number 3.
Yeah, those two are clearly the ones to beat. But again, on the nature-nurture, I think the Trombetta horse is interesting. Fifth today is a claiming event, $7,500 tags. They're going to go 6 furlongs. How'd you see it in race number 5?
Well, I mentioned yesterday, Caron McGee started off 2014, a bit of a slow beat. Perhaps maybe weather conditions, the horses have got to him, and he kind of really had a super end of 2013. But back-to-back wins yesterday. I'm going to go back to a horse 14-day rest that was Lone Speed, would run down last time out, and that is Act of Divinity. He got beat on the fair and square by a horse who was shipping in from New York named Charlie's Punch. And I think he looks perhaps the speed of the speed again today. We'll try to take them all the way. Number 5, Act of Divinity.
All right, and let's look out at race number 8 this afternoon. It's a starter allowance, $35,000 level. In race number 8, they're going to go 7 furlongs. And your thoughts?
Okay, I'm going to the 7 in here, Midnight Music, a horse you might be familiar with, obviously, up in New York. Ran at Aqueduct last couple of times out. I've been running at Belmont and Saratoga during the summer. Recent claim for Midwest Thoroughbreds, and their New York trainer, Laura Perillo. I thought there's December 22 up in New York, and that track rated good, and the inner track speed was much the best that day. Nobody was going to beat Old Class or Clawback. He's in a softer field here today. Obviously, the runner-up of the race came back to win, and I don't think he'll go to the lead, but he'll be in a perfect stalking spot here in a very contentious 8th race on the card. You got the John Robb entry. I think Dark Voyager is out. At least I had him this morning as a scratch, but you might want to look at Avarice, who was sharp off the claim, but he did close kind of with the grain of the track that day, January the 18th. But never underestimate John Robb in there. So I'll go with the 7, Midnight Music, as the top play in the prime play today, in part of that pick 4, pick 5, and the first half of the late double.
From the very potent Midwest Thoroughbreds, no question about it. And Dave, we'll wrap things up for this week, but we're looking forward to talking to you next Thursday because, again, coming up a week from this Saturday, another one of the great stakes cards you've had all winter long down at Laurel, so I'm looking forward to that. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk to you next week. So, again, thanks for the visit this morning. Good luck this afternoon. Talk to you next week.
Okay, hopefully you have a nice, cleanly run races this afternoon. Nobody losing their reins or getting out of the irons here. It's been a wild week.
You don't want too many viral video rides on your card.
Yeah, we like the attention, but maybe not every week.
All right, Dave, thanks.
Okay.
We'll head to our next break. When we come back, Nancy Uri Holthus from Oak Lawn Park. Stay tuned.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
Using CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Simply log on with your username and password from the homepage. 2. Fund your Capital OTB account through our Easy Money, Green Dot, or Visa MasterCard options. And 3. Place your bet on one of our 3 easy-to-navigate wagering platforms, Capital Bet TV, Capital Bet Express, or Capital Bet Pro. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Still reaching out to Nancy Uri-Holthus. As John DeSilva said earlier, Oaklawn is canceled, so she may be in transit to or from, or as the day has wound down there without racing at Oaklawn Park for this afternoon. But in the meantime, I will pick up and show last Saturday's Martha Washington. Haven't gotten a chance to see that. That was the feature race down at Oaklawn last Saturday. The Martha Washington $100,000 purse. These are 3-year-old fillies going a mile. The horse I found interesting was the Asmussen horse, Euphrosyne. That will be the number 1 horse in here. Will wind up running second. The winner's going to be the number 6, Aragorn Amy. Comes down off a maiden breaker in the career debut at Woodbine. And I said it earlier, the Woodbine shippers down in Florida have attracted me this year. Well, here's one getting it done in the stakes race. Second career start for Josie Carroll. Wins at 13-1. So, again, pay a little bit of attention as we go forward this winter, essentially maybe regardless of the venue. I said down in Florida the Woodbine shippers have attracted me, but Aragorn Amy gets it done, second career start down at Oaklawn in the Martha Washington on Saturday. And again, Euphrosyne, the horse I like for Asmussen, was coming in off a nice win down at Fairgrounds in the start just prior. This is a fairly lightly raced runner too that ran well in the first couple starts of the career and then maybe got a little bit better when stretched to 2 turns. So Euphrosyne is one I would watch going forward. Running third in the race was Ireland, the Wayne Lucas trainee who began the career up at Saratoga and threw in a couple of duds. But on the breeding, Ireland's kind of interesting. This one is a sibling to Dublin, who was the nice 2-year-old for Lucas up at Saratoga going back last year, a couple of years ago it was. But I think there's some breeding that makes Ireland kind of interesting. And this one looks like it took a few races just to figure it out. Prior to Saturday's third place in the Martha Washington, had a big maiden breaker down at Oaklawn in the 6th career start. So Ireland. But again, the winner coming in first start against winners makes that move into Stakes Company on the move from Woodbine. Aragorn Amy is certainly interesting, but I think the second and third place finishers, Euphrosyne and Ireland, could be interesting to watch going forward as well. Coming up this weekend down at Oaklawn, it will be the King Cotton $100,000 purse for 4-year-olds and up, going 6 furlongs. And the interesting couple of horses for me in here coming up this weekend down at Oaklawn. Black Bear for Chris Hartman, just on maybe a little bit of a horse for a course angle, laid off from end of November until late middle of January. Ran a good second here at Oaklawn. Has had some nice starts prior at Oaklawn. Not in Stakes Company, but I think this is a field that Black Bear may fit into kind of nicely. So Black Bear is kind of interesting. But Pico Pride for Mac Robertson, another one who has shown some ability over the Oaklawn Strip. Has been off since July at Delaware, but I think that one could be a contender in here as well. Alsvid certainly is one that will attract some attention. Steve Asmussen has Michael Margarita. You always have to pay attention to the Asmussen horses. So there's a field of 7 in here on Saturday in the King Cotton, but I think it's an interesting field down there at Oaklawn on the weekend. And we also mentioned, going back to last Saturday, we talked about it with Jeremy Plonk. There was the nice undercard race too, with Boji Moon getting back into a winning position. Started the career with 3 straight wins. The Iowa bred that, going back to last summer, was attracting some attention. Ended the season with a couple of, I won't say duds, was a 6th and a 5th. 6th at Keeneland in the Bourbon. That was on a synthetic surface, maybe a excuse there. Then was in the Springboard Mile and was up contending late in the race and wound up being 5th. But that's notable because it was the Springboard Mile. So now we have Walt, who ran 4th in the Springboard and ran very well a couple of weeks ago in the Smarty Jones. And Boji Moon comes out of the Springboard and has a winning race last Saturday on the undercard and a little allowance at Oaklawn Park. Coming up this weekend, again, besides that King Cotton at Oaklawn Park, another nice weekend of stakes action. A couple of stakes down at Gulfstream are going to be worth paying attention to. And certainly tomorrow on the show, we'll hit on these with Ron Nicoletti. But the Swanee River repost from Bilmont and Juddmonte makes it over from Europe, comes to the United States after having run against horses such as the Fugue over in Europe. I think in the first start in the United States. Repost will be kind of interesting. And Caroline Thomas, who just in the career, one of those horses, 4-year-old with 11 career starts, 3 wins, a second, 3 third-place finishes, over $250,000 for Barclay Tag. Caroline Thomas is one of those, just always seems on the edge of really turning into a nice one. Hasn't been seen since a close-up third place in the QE2 at Keeneland back in October. But Caroline Thomas in the Suwannee River also should be interesting. They also have the Gulfstream Park Sprint. That one attracts our attention because our old friend Jackson Ben back after a good second-place finish in the Hal's Hope last time behind Lee. Lee is going to be interesting coming out of that Hal's Hope, showing up Sunday in the Don, and the Don is going to be a lot of fun to watch as well on Sunday. Also in this Gulfstream Park Sprint on Saturday, Fort Larned and Purple Egg. Purple Egg, the horse that showed some promise last year, was a 3-year-old, partly owned by Margot Flynn of Tampa Bay Downs. Over at Santa Anita on Saturday, a nice card of stakes action with some big names, high anticipation in the San Antonio Grade 3 event. Obviously, all eyes on the 2014 debut of Game On Dude. Comes out of that near miss in the Clark at the end of November behind Will Take Charge. Last year in the San Antonio, won for fun by 6 lengths under Mike Smith. Mike Smith on board again Saturday. Willie Conker moving over from the turf, maybe a little head scratcher there. But Blue Skies and Rainbows, who has put together a couple of stakes wins out in Southern California most recently, he could be interesting. San Marcos on the grass at 1.25 miles. Lucayan and Bio Pro, maybe a little bit interesting. Tamarain for Tommy Proctor. Gary Stevens on board also. And then the Bob Lewis, the Grade 2 event, 4 3-year-olds going 1.16 miles for a couple $100,000. Midnight Hawk, who is attracting a lot of attention out of the Baffert barn. And then the other Baffert, Chitu, also runs. So, uncoupled longer half, that's going to be interesting. Cool Samurai for John Sheriffs off of the Maiden Breaker. And Candy Boy, who 5 career starts so far for John Sheriffs. And again, the morning line on the Derby Future Pool, Candy Boy was 50-1. This race will go off after that pool closes. So Candy Boy will be fun to watch, particularly after we get a chance to see what the final odds are and see if people made a good bet or a bad bet in the future pool on that one. But all of those are coming up on Saturday, a good weekend of stakes action with those Saturday stakes, and then the nice Sunday stakes action over at Gulfstream with the Don and the career finale of Groupie Doll. Those will be on that Fox 1 broadcast, the Jockey Club Tour that kicks off on Fox Sports 1 on Sunday. So we'll talk a little bit more about all of that tomorrow on Racing Across America, but that's going to wrap things up for this Thursday morning. Seth Merrow in here. We're in here every weekday from 10 until 11 a.m. with Racing Across America. Today, talked with Dave Rodman, talked with John DeSilva. Hopefully we gave you some good ideas for this afternoon. So as always, cash some tickets today. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.